This is the Kiss on the Harbour Light.
The Adventures of Sailor Sam.
Land ho!
Where away?
Starboard ho!
Hear the creak of the rigging. Listen to the wind whip the sails. Yes, boys and girls, Sailor Sam's big schooner, the Porpoise, plunges swiftly through the waves, eager to serve her master. Where's she going? Wish I could tell you, but we'll have to find out from Sailor Sam, an adventurous young man whose hunt for scientific truth takes him anywhere. Yes, anywhere. And with him go his two young cousins, Buddy and Nancy. Aye, mate. It's full speed ahead now for seafaring thrills with Sailor Sam!
What I can't figure out is how you made those tracks right under where I was sleeping without me hearing you.
Well, with all that buzzsaw noise you were making, Ole, we didn't have to be very quiet.
Oh, that's sure.
Sam and the crew are on a vacation. Sam's friend, Mr. Houston, a big game hunter, has given the crew the use of his eastern seacoast cottage while he is away in Africa on a hunt. Hazel and Nancy had become bored with the lack of adventure and had pretended that there was a wild tiger loose in the area. They had taken a tiger paw from Mr. Houston's collection and made tracks near the cottage. Sam, Ole, and Buddy fell for it hook, line, and sinker and searched for the beast.
It was a pretty good trick, ladies, but we were on to you almost right away.
Sure, all those tracks that didn't really go anywhere. And those funny ape tracks out in the back. Who doesn't know the difference between a tiger and a monkey?
We didn't put any tracks out and back. Hazel thought that would give it
Oh,
all.
come on. The joke's over.
We didn't.
That's right, Sam. We didn't even go out in the back.
Oh, the next thing they'll be telling us if there was a wild gorilla running around here somewhere.
I'm afraid you ladies are trying to push your success a little too far. We were fooled by the first trick, but it's too soon to try another one on us.
Sam, we aren't trying.
Hello in there! Anyone at home?
No, I'll see who that is. Excuse me. Yes?
How do you do? Is Mr. Houston in, please?
I'm afraid not. You see,
But I got to see him. Expect him back soon?
No, I'm afraid not. You see,
My dear woman, you must understand the importance of this visit.
Who is it, Hazel?
I'm not sure.
Is that Mr. Houston? I got to see him.
That is not Mr. Houston. I told you he wasn't here, and I'm not in the
Well,
habit.
maybe I can help.
Mr. Houston?
Oh,
I'm sorry. Mr. Houston is away in Africa. We're friends of his and are using his cottage while he's away. Is there anything I can do for you? My name is Sam Stone.
Well, I wanted to see Mr. Houston, but maybe you can help. Are you a hunter, too?
I'm afraid not in the same way Mr. Houston is.
Paradise is the name. Clarence Paradise.
paradise.
That's right, like in heaven. I'm the owner of the Paradise Amusement Park around the cove. You probably noticed it, maybe even been over.
Oh, we've seen it a few times on our way by, Mr. Paradise.
But you don't know anything about wild animals, huh?
Oh, I didn't say that. I said I didn't hunt them.
Why, Sam knows more about animals than most animal trainers.
Well, then, possibly you can help me.
Won't you come in? We're just having an afternoon pick-me-up of ice-cold lemonade. Maybe we could interest you in some.
Lemonade, huh? All right, maybe I will.
We've only been in this area a few days, but...
I was going to ask you how long you'd been here. You been over to my amusement park yet?
We came out here for a restful time. Those places are so noisy.
Nothing better than an amusement park to forget your troubles.
What troubles?
Huh?
Here we are. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Mr. Clarence Paradise. Mr. Paradise, this is Nancy and Buddy, my two cousins, and my first mate, Ole.
Hi, Nancy, Buddy.
We've already met, but my name is Hazel. Won't you sit down and have some lemonade?
Thanks very much. Can't stay long.
Now, you seemed pretty impatient when you first arrived.
What's the trouble, Mr. Paradise?
Well, I'd really hoped to get Mr. Houston's help in this. His experience with wild animals and all.
I see.
But seeing as you seem to have some knowledge along this line, maybe you can help.
I'll try. What is it?
Well, over at my amusement park,
Hey, do you own the Paradise Amusement Park?
That's right, boy. Like I was saying over there, one of the big attractions is an act I have where our strong man wrestles with a snow-white gorilla. And wins, of course.
Boy, is it a real gorilla?
That's right. Of course, we sedate him a little for the fight, and our strong man applies pressure to a few nerve centers, which pretty well cinches the fight for him.
What does sedate mean?
Well, they give the gorilla something to make him sleepy, honey.
Oh, then it isn't a fair fight, is it?
Well, the customers never complain, kid.
Do they know that the gorilla is sleepy?
Anyhow, yesterday morning, the big monkey began to act kind of strange. Jumpy, you know. Before the fight, he didn't take as much of the sedative as usual.
That doesn't sound too good for your strong man.
It wasn't. He's in the hospital with a couple of broken ribs.
Wow, how about the gorilla?
That's why I'm here. The gorilla has escaped. I came here hoping to get Mr. Houston to track the big fella down. Now, I don't want any organized search party because it might cause a panic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reasonably sure he's come at least this far up the peninsula.
What makes you think that, Mr. Paradise?
One of the big ape's favorite tricks is to pull an automobile tire out of shape. He's been playing with those things since he was little. On my way up here, I saw at least 3 of those round life preservers along the beach, all ripped to shreds.
Boy, that means he's probably around here somewhere.
Say, Skipper, remember those tracks out and back?
That's right. And you said you didn't make them there.
That's right.
We didn't.
Well, then, that's it. Not only is that escaped ape in this area, he's been running around right in our backyard.
Now hold on, all of you.
Oh, what's the matter, Sam?
Yeah, what's the matter?
Mr. Paradise, there are a few things I'd like to get straight before I leave this relaxing lemonade and step out into that hot sun searching for a gorilla.
Well, sure, anything at all, but don't you think we ought to be...
You see, Mr. Paradise, I've already caught a wild tiger today, and I need a little relaxation.
Sam.
I'm afraid this is a little above my head. I know nothing about a tiger. I'm only interested in my gorilla.
You said that the gorilla was white, didn't you?
That's right.
Just 2 points. I've never heard of a white gorilla in my life. And if there is such an animal, how could it get this far from your park without being seen?
I don't know. But I can clear up that color business. We bleach him.
You what?
That's right. Every time it's needed, we put him to sleep and bleach his coat white. Makes it more of an attraction to the public.
You mean people pay you money to see a white gorilla that isn't really white in a fight he really can't win?
Now, look, what are we sitting around here for? My big monkey is out there somewhere. The longer he stays out there, the hungrier he gets, and the more of a problem he'll be to catch.
Well, I'll have to admit that your story's a good one. You're every bit as convincing as Hazel and Nancy were earlier. But 100 days is enough for me.
Sam, this is not part of our joke.
Oh, that's so?
Yeah, there are times when I'm glad you keep your head, Skipper. They had me fooled all over again.
Me too. Who are you really, mister?
I've told you who I am and why I'm here. If you won't help me and Mr. Houston is in Africa, I guess the only way left is to call the local authorities for help.
Like to use the phone over there?
Yes, I would. You have any idea what the number is?
It's probably there in the book.
Sam, you've got to believe us. I don't know this man, except from when he appeared here today. Now, this is not a joke. He's serious, and so am I.
Hazel, a joke is a joke. If you carry it too much farther...
Oh, Sam, please. On my word, this is not a joke. We really didn't put those tracks out and back. We don't know anything about them. We've never even seen Mr. Paradise before he arrived, and as far as I know, he really has lost his gorilla, and it might be out there somewhere. Now, please, Sam, believe it. It's true.
Here's the number. Wouldn't you know they'd call the local police official a constable?
Mr. Paradise.
Uh-huh.
I think maybe I owe you an apology.
What are you talking about?
Well, I'm afraid it's a little like the boy who called wolf so often that when there really was a wolf, no one believed him.
Well, I've never set up a scare like this before.
I'm sure you haven't, but you picked the wrong day, or maybe your ape picked the wrong day to have this happen around here.
I gathered that some time ago.
I'll be glad to help in any way I can. What do you say we have a look at those tracks out and back?
Now you're talking, Mr. Stone. Let's go.
This is where we saw them, right over here.
Yes. They look like his tracks, all right. They seem to be leading over toward that clump of bushes on the edge of that wooded area.
I suppose if he were around here, he'd look for some place like that to hide.
Let's have a look over there. Maybe we can tell how long it's been since he was here.
Good idea. Look, this grass hasn't been pushed down for very long. Looks as though he just left.
You think we can follow him?
Well, Mr. Paradise, I
Call
think...
me Clarence, Sam.
All right, Clarence. How do you expect to catch him once you've spotted him?
I brought a truck up here with a cage in it. I figure we can cross that bridge when we come to it. Hey, Sam.
I heard it too.
There it is again.
Sounded a little closer. Quick, get down behind this tree. We'll wait and see if we can...
He is coming this way. What if he sees us?
Stay down. Here he comes.
Oh, hey, that's not my
Holy!
Holy.
What are you doing here?
I'm sorry, Skipper. I thought I'd look around a bit on my own, but I sure didn't expect to run into you two hiding behind a tree like that.
And you, Ole, we thought you were... Well, you know what we thought you were.
I know. That's who I thought you were.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Who else came out with you, Ole?
Easel and the children are going to stay in. They're the only ones out here.
Let's get down and be quiet.
Looks like a cop.
It's the constable.
Oh.
What are you doing here, Constable Kimberly?
I saw it. I saw it. No one will believe me, but I saw it.
Saw it? What did you see?
An ape. A great big white ape.
Try to settle down, Constable.
I was out looking for rabbits when all of a sudden, there it was. I couldn't believe my eyes. A big white ape.
That's him.
Where?
I mean, that's the ape we're looking for.
Where did you see the ape, Constable?
Back there. I shot it.
Shot it? No, not my white gorilla. Where is he?
I didn't kill it. Only hit it in the leg, looked like. He got away.
Oh, no.
What's the matter?
He was in a foul mood when he escaped. But now, without food for a while and wounded on top of it, he'll be impossible to get near.
And that just means that it's more important than ever that we catch him.
Catch him?
That's right, Ole. His hunger, and now the wound, has turned him from a little more than an escaped pet into a real public menace. Let's get back to the cottage for a couple of guns. We've got to find that gorilla.
Wow, Sam is setting out to find an animal strong enough to put a man in the hospital with broken ribs. You'll be sure to want to be with us next time for more exciting adventure with Sailor Sam!
Stay tuned for the listening post.
Hey, what's this old post?
What's that? You're gonna dent my bark.
Say, the thing talks.
Well, sure. I'm the listening post.
The listening post?
Yep. For years and years I've stood in this spot. I've seen much. I've heard much, and in my old wooden heart are stories.
Hi, boys and girls. We're reading a story about Wilfred Grenfell, doctor and explorer. It's written by Joyce Blackburn and published by Zondervan. On Easter Sunday, April 21st, 1908, word came that there was a medical need across Hare Bay, and although it was a dangerous time to travel because of thawing, Dr. Grenfell hitched up his team of 8 dogs and started out. His pet spaniel, Blackie, sat on his lap in the komatik or sledge. The first day they made 20 miles, and they stayed in a deserted shack overnight. The next morning, he decided to go across huge ice pans instead of taking the long way around the bay. But with only a quarter of a mile left to go, they came to sish ice, which would quickly disintegrate. Dr. Grenfell leapt from the sledge to push it, but the sledge began to sink. He cut the dogs free so they could swim. First Bryn, the lead dog, and then the doctor managed to make it to a floating ice pan. Though he was exhausted and suddenly drowsy from the cold, he helped the other dogs onto the ice. The sledge and supplies were lost, and he had taken off his coat, cap, and gloves in order to swim. They were floating out to sea. The small ice pan they were on was tipping with every movement, so Dr. Grenfell and the dogs made it to another larger one. He made himself a makeshift covering by splitting his boots. But it wouldn't be enough to keep him from freezing when night came, and so because he had no other choice, he had to kill 3 of his huskies and use their skins for a covering. Throughout the night, with the other dogs huddled around him, he slept fitfully. Toward dawn, he knew one hand was freezing, but he managed to make a crooked flagstaff and raise a flag, and a boat of rescuers found him. Word had gone out that he was missing, and when they carried him ashore, every man, woman, and child was there waiting. To them, he was a living miracle. But Will was laughing at himself, tied up in rags, stuffed out with strands of rope, wrapped in bloody dog skins, a weird-looking hero whose frost-burned hands the people kissed. The doctor was rushed to his own hospital in St. Anthony, where he was forced to rest, something he had never learned to do. But his frozen feet and hands would keep him helpless there for a while. He asked a fellow doctor, as soon as he was thinking clearly, "What about that chap? I was on my way to see." "Some neighbors brought him in, Dr. Grenfell. It was necessary to amputate his leg, but we're sure he'll be all right with lots of care." "Good. I was afraid we'd lost him." I did lose my friends, you know. I'd like you to do me a favor. Order a bronze plaque with this tribute engraved on it. To the memory of 3 noble dogs, Moody, Watch, Spy, whose lives were given for mine on the ice. The ice pan adventure was widely reported in the English newspapers, and when Will went back to London to lecture and raise funds a year later, he was asked to tell about it wherever he spoke. Being Will, he all but dismissed it as just another episode in his action-packed life. At the end of the tour, he was to return to Boston instead of to Labrador to receive honorary degrees from Harvard and Williams College. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to take his mother to the United States with him. She was 78 now, and he feared this might be her last chance to accompany him. And so they sailed together on the Mauretania. While Mrs. Grenfell's ancestors had won fame as soldiers and diplomats in India for generations, she did not share her son's love for the sea, nor did it love her. She spent the crossing in her giant 4-poster brass bed, unable to leave their suite. On the second day out, a hearty Scotsman introduced himself to Will during a stroll on deck. "Hi, my name's Sterling. I'm Wilfred Grenfell.
It's a pleasure to meet you. That's my family walking ahead of us. We're from Scotland, but live in Chicago. We're going back there now.
Apparently, Mr. Sterling included in his family his daughter's attractive friend, a young lady dressed fashionably in black.
Join us in some shuffleboard, Grenfell.
That was the first of many invitations from Mr. Sterling to share their games and afternoon teas. The girl in black held Will's attention with her gaiety and humor and good looks. He noticed she laughed at the same things that made him laugh. If he discussed a subject that others didn't know about, she would flash him a look that said, "I don't understand about ichthyology either, but don't stop talking. I'm fascinated." By the third day, Will was searching for an opportunity to be alone with her, even though they had not been formally introduced. It came. She was just entering her stateroom when he happened along. Suddenly, the only thing he could think of was how fast the ship was crossing the Atlantic. 26 knots an hour demanded action. Without any romantic preliminaries, he simply asked the girl in black to marry him. "But I doubt if you even know my name."
"That's not the issue. The only thing that interests me is what your name is going to be."
Later, Grenfell compared his daring to Lord Nelson's when he put his telescope to his blind eye and went straight for the enemy at Copenhagen to win a famous victory. Not that Will won Anne Elizabeth McClanahan's consent to be his wife the moment he asked her, but she did invite him to bring his mother to her home in Lake Forest, Illinois, several weeks later. Needless to say, Will had no intention of making such a trip only to have it end in failure. Achievement was a habit with him, and so he took along an engagement ring. And when he left, the ring was on Anne's finger. They were married in Grace Episcopal Church, Chicago, November 18th, 1909. After a honeymoon in Virginia, the Grenfells sailed in January for Newfoundland, and the new home already built for them in St. Anthony. No doubt Anne's friends wondered how the well-bred daughter of Colonel McClanahan, accustomed to the comforts of society — she had just recently graduated from Bryn Mawr — would adjust to the rigors of the far north. Perhaps Will wondered a little, too, until their 5-day trip up the Newfoundland coast stretched into 9 days of the nastiest winter weather. When the steamer entered St. Anthony Harbor, the frozen spray made it look as though it were a huge cake, sugared and dripping with icing. And where was the pampered Mrs. Wilfred Grenfell? On deck with her husband, waving to the crowd of welcoming townspeople. She had made the trip through gale and blizzard without a sign of seasickness and without a single complaint. She was a sailor in the highest Grenfell tradition. Nothing could have pleased Will more. 3 children were born to them in St. Anthony: Wilfred Thomason, Kinloch Pascoe, and Rosamond Loveday. Anne quickly added Wilfred's wide interests to her own. She had rare gifts for organization, a patience which balanced her husband's impulsiveness, and unlimited energy to match his. The details of the mushrooming work which he had ignored, she put into perfect order. The responsibilities he had neglected because one man can't do everything, she assigned to capable assistants. The correspondence which he had stuffed into drawers unanswered, she answered systematically. The business matters which bored him interested her. She turned out to be an efficient manager, broker, and public relations expert, all rolled into one. When it came to thinking of new ways to raise funds, she was even more imaginative than Will, and soon contributors from Maine to Florida were supporting her Child Welfare Department and Educational Fund, which provided the children in the Grenfell orphanages and schools with training for useful careers. Anne didn't limit her interest to the children. Tirelessly, she invented ways to sell the hand-woven rugs, carved ivory figures, pottery, beaded moccasins, and baskets made by the native people, so that they would not starve or feel useless in their communities. Will would look at his wife and wonder, how did I ever get along without her? With Anne to help him, he was free to spend more time in the hospitals, doing the work he loved the most. He could also relax more when he was off duty. Their mutual love of fun kept the Grenfell home so cheerful and comfortable, everyone wanted to be invited there. And everyone was. Parties were Anne's specialty, and Sunday night sings before the fire. Guests came from all parts of the world, but the local fishermen and their families came too, and everyone loved the natural, easy hospitality of the doctor and his beautiful wife. When someone asked Will what he thought of marriage, he said, "What do I think of my digestion? Marriage is as natural as any other condition of life on earth. But that doesn't mean you can take it for granted or abuse it. It can never be appraised by what you get out of it. Its success will be determined by what you put into it, the same as in any other worthwhile venture. It is not my ease, my stomach, my dignity that matters, but my effect on the other half. One selfish player on the very best team can lose the game if he hogs the ball when he knows he ought to pass it to give another player the glory of making the touchdown." Anne stacked the pages of manuscript on the corner of the desk. All morning she'd worked on Wilfred's notes, trying to arrange them for publication. "At last I'm making progress," she thought. Will and the children had gone down to St. John's for a week, and she was alone and undisturbed for the first time in ages. Tomorrow she would sleep as late as she pleased. She smiled at a small oval picture of a gentleman on horseback. It had a special place on her desk, and she often talked to it, as she did now. "Mr. Sterling, these happy, happy years of being the wife of Wilfred Grenfell have changed me in some ways, but one thing will never change. I shall not adopt Will's habit of rising at 4 a.m. and breaking into the ice to take a swim. Never." Suddenly, more than anything in the world, she wished she could have a long, long talk with Mr. Sterling. Since her father's death, he had become one of their dearest friends. Well, the next best thing to a talk was a letter, and she could spend the whole afternoon writing it if she chose. Across the top of the sheet of blue stationery, she sketched the view from the window, the village of St. Anthony with its distant church spire and surrounding hills. She had acquired Wilfred's habit of sketching everything, but her art was schoolgirlish compared to his. Mr. Sterling would think it was beautiful, though. Anne began the letter. "Dear, dear friend, if only you were here to share the view and the quiet with me. Wilfred left early this morning for St. John's, taking the children along. And I must say, it is a treat to have the house to myself. But we'll have to listen next time, boys and girls, to hear the rest of the letter to Mr. Sterling. Bye.
Bye, Mrs. Schmid.
That's our story for today. Listen again next time when Flo Schmid comes your way with another story from the Listening Post.
Now it's time for Captain's Kids.
Hi, boys and girls. Welcome aboard the good ship Salvation with our Captain Jesus. This is your Auntie Arlene, and I'm looking forward to a wonderful trip with all the captain's kids today. As the sails fill with the breeze and we head out to sea, let's sing and play a game, okay? Then, guess what comes next? Our good old friend Uncle Remus is back with us to tell us another good story. So let's go.
Well, bless them children's heart, it's time for stories again. And old Uncle Remus gonna commence with the story of Goofy Gopher Goose. And what a story it is. Well, every once in a while, we all have a problem. A problem that's pretty hard sometimes to figure out and figure what to do. And one of the problems that Goofy Gopher has is seeing. He can't see at all. Of course, he can go underneath the ground mighty, mighty fast, and he can do a lot of hearing and all that, but he can't see. He just, of course, I guess maybe it's a good idea that he can't, because if he had eyes, he'd always be getting something in him, because he digs underneath the ground all the time, and you know if you dug underneath the ground all the time and didn't come up in the daylight much and stay underneath there and do a lot of digging, that you're bound to get some of that dirt in your eyes. And old Goofy Gopher don't have to worry about that, because he ain't got no eyes to get no dirt in. And that's for sure. And he get along powerful good, too, without 'em. Another thing is dark underneath the ground all the time, so there ain't no light underneath there, so you naturally, to see things with, you got to have light. And folks that ain't got no light can't see nothing. You know how it is in your room at night. When you turns out the light, there ain't nothing that you can see. And that's the way it is with Goofy Gopher. It's dark all the time, and he ain't got no need for no eyes. And so it is that he learned to hear good. That's a funny thing about folkses and animals and such. If there's something that they ain't got, there's something that they is got is twice as good. Just like Goofy Gopher. That hearing of his is twice as good as anybody else's hearing, because he concentrates on it. Don't have to worry about his eyes, so he concentrates and he can see with his ears. See does as good with his ears as he can, as if he had eyes almost. And old Brer Fox didn't know that, and old Brer Fox was figuring on fixing old Goofy Gopher so that he would do something mean to little Brer Rabbit. And old Brer Fox, one of them mean kind of fellas. He liked to do mean things. And one day, the way this all happened, he caught little Brer Rabbit, and he was going to make him just as mean as he could make him, because he liked rabbits when they're mean so he could eat them. And he was telling little Brer Rabbit like this, he said, "You so nice and all that I hates to eat you. But what I gonna do, I gonna make you mean and bad, and then when just so I hate you, then I gonna eat you."
You ain't never gonna make me so you hate me.
Oh, yes, I is, too. You just leave it to me, Brer Rabbit. And with that, he go over to where he see Goofy Gopher's hole in the ground. Now, he know that Goofy Gopher don't like nobody sticking their feet down in his hole where he digging in the ground. Goofy Gopher don't like that, and he just liable to snap at somebody to stick their feet down in there or not. Old Brer Fox say to himself, "I know what I'll do. I'll carry that little rabbit over there, and I'll take his paw and stick it right down in Goofy Gopher's hole, and old Goofy Gopher bite him on the paw, and when he do, little Brer Rabbit gonna get powerful mad. That's what I'll do." Now, when old Brer Fox was talking this way, he was a good ways from Goofy Gopher's hole in the ground. But Goofy Gopher got ears that he can hear so far away that old Brer Fox couldn't believe it. And naturally, Goofy Gopher heard everything that Brer Fox was a-saying. And that's when Goofy Gopher was telling Brer Snake about it. Goofy Gopher say, "That old fox is coming over here, and he gonna take that poor little rabbit's foot and stick it down here in this Goofy Gopher hole of mine. And when he stick that little rabbit's foot down that gopher hole, he expect me to bite it."
Naturally. Why, isn't you going to do it?
"No, I ain't no snake like you is. No. But I tell you what I is gonna do. I gonna find out just exactly where he is, and then I gonna dig a hole right up behind old Brer Fox and bite him on the foot. And you can be able to hear him scream and holler for 10 miles when I get through biting him on the foot."
You is going to do that? Are you sure that you won't be goofing, Goofy Gopher?
No. A lot of them will say that Goofy Gopher goofed. A lot of them will say that. But I'll be knowing what I'm doing. A lot of times folks do things and everybody say that they goof. But I know a lot of times that folks that do things and people say that they goof when they didn't goof. They did what they did on purpose. It just looked like they goof. And that's what I gonna do. It's gonna look like I gonna goof, but I gonna really do what I doing because I want to do it and I know what I doing.
Well, then do it.
Now, Il's gonna do it. He coming over here now.
And sure enough, goodness gracious alive, old Brer Fox came over and didn't do a thing in the world but take little Brer Rabbit's foot and stick it right down in the Goofy Gopher's gopher hole. And when he did, Goofy Gopher didn't do a thing in the world except listen to what old Brer Fox was saying.
Wonder why you don't bite your foot.
I don't know. Now, just let my foot out because he liable to bite my toe.
No, I gonna hold it in there. He in there. I know he under there. And don't make no noise because he liable to hear you.
Now, he's gonna make some noise, too.
No, you don't. Do you make some noise, I snip off one of your ears. Boy, you will be a lop-eared rabbit if I snips off one of them. Now, you be real still.
Okay. But little Brer Rabbit was just as quiet as he could be. In the meantime, Goofy Gopher was digging a hole up in the back of where old Brer Fox was. And Brer Fox didn't know a thing about it, because Goofy Gopher was digging from underneath the ground. And Goofy Gopher a fast digger, too. Goodness gracious alive. He can dig under the ground almost as fast as you can walk. He's the fastest digging fool you done ever seen in your life. And that's the truth. And he just kept a digging and a digging and a digging. And the next thing you know, plop, he was right up behind old Brer Fox. And that's the truth. And there was old Brer Fox's big bushy tail laying right along the ground, right at old Brer Goofy Gopher's gopher hole, the new one that he done dug and just come up out of. Brer Fox didn't know it was there, and he kept holding little Brer Rabbit's foot down the first gopher hole.
I don't know why you don't bite your foot. If I stick my foot down there, he'd have done had it bit a long time ago. Him and that Brer Squirrel. I'll stick my foot in a hollow tree, and the old squirrel be in there show the world and bite me on the foot. And I'll stick a foot down in a gopher hole, and gophers bite me. But you got your foot in there, and they ain't biting you.
I ain't got my foot in there. You got it in there.
Well, that's the same thing.
Well, sir, old Brer Fox was holding on to little Brer Rabbit. And then all at once, Goofy Gopher bit old Brer Fox right in the middle of his big bushy tail. Ow! Old Brer Fox hollered till you could hear him clean around the countryside, and everybody know he was in trouble. And little Brer Rabbit, the minute old Goofy Gopher bit old Brer Fox on his big bushy tail, little Brer Rabbit lit out as fast as he could go. And old Brer Fox, he lit out too. He sure did. Goodness gracious, it looked for sure like old Brer Fox was going to catch little Brer Rabbit. In fact, maybe he do catch him, too, when we tell the next story. Maybe he done been caught again. But for the time being, he done got to lose. 'Cause Goofy Gopher goofed. Or at least that's the way old Brer Fox told him. Told him that he done goofed. That's the way old Brer Fox told it to everybody. That Goofy Gopher didn't know the difference between biting Brer Rabbit's foot and biting old Brer Fox's tail. But you and I know that that ain't the way it happened. The next time you see something happen and you think somebody done made a big mistake, it might be a good idea to look just a little bit further to make sure whether they did it on purpose or no. Oh, thank you again, children. Thank you for listening to Uncle Remus. And don't forget that I'll be back with more stories at the same time tomorrow. And every day along about this same time. This is old Uncle Remus thanking you again. And until tomorrow, goodbye, everybody.
Be kind to one another. Be kind in Tender-hearted and forgiving, as God has told us to. Be kind to one another in all you say and do. Tender-hearted and forgiving, as God has forgiven you.
Old Brer Fox didn't know how to show any kindness, did he? He's mean. When we become a child of God by asking Jesus into our hearts, he helps us get rid of the meanness, and he helps us to be kind to others. Kindness helps other people want Jesus as their captain, too. Our next story tells us how that works. Aaron was a good example of kindness.
That morning, the fellows had come over to invite him to the park for a game of baseball, but Aaron had been busy hoeing the garden then. And after he finished mowing the lawn, he was going to wash the car. And then after the sun went down and it started to cool off, he planned to water all of the lawns. It wasn't so surprising that Aaron had chores to do. All of the boys in the neighborhood did chores. But the surprising thing was that neither Aaron's mother nor his father had told him to do all of those things. In fact, his mother had urged him to join the boys at the pool that afternoon.
Why don't you go swimming, Aaron? You worked hard all morning in the garden.
I can't, Mother. You know I have to get all of this done before Father gets home tonight.
But he didn't tell you you had to mow the lawn or wash the car. In fact, he likes to wash the car on Sundays.
That's just it, Mother. I don't want him to have anything to do on Sunday.
Well, what's so special about Sunday? It isn't Father's Day or his birthday or anything like that.
I know, Mom, but I'm hoping that if I do all these things around the yard, he'll notice and ask me about it.
I'm sure he will. And then you'll ask him for that bike you've been wanting, right? And he won't be able to resist because he'll see how hard you've worked.
Nope, but I am going to ask him for something. I'm going to ask him to go to church with me, and maybe if he doesn't have anything to do on Sunday, he will.
Aaron's mother had smiled when he said that. She and Aaron had been attending a church just a couple blocks away for several months, and they had accepted Christ as their Savior. It had happened during the same service. The preacher had told about how Jesus had died on the cross, and how he had been buried and then had raised from the dead. He had told how all that had been done so that every person who would accept Christ as Savior could go to heaven. When he gave the invitation, first Aaron and then his mother had stepped out and gone down to the front. Then a kind old white-haired gentleman had taken them to the side room and explained the way of salvation once again. And both Aaron and his mother had bowed their heads and asked Jesus to save them. They had gone home that day all excited about what had happened, and had asked their father if he didn't want to get saved too. But Mr. Taylor had just laughed and said he'd have to wait and see if it did any good for them before he tried it. For several weeks, Aaron had asked him every Sunday if he didn't want to go to church with them, but the answer was always the same. Sunday was his day to wash the car, mow the lawn, and hoe the garden. Why should he spend his only free day out of the whole week in church? So Aaron had grown discouraged and had quit asking, until this idea had come.
Well, son, I hope it works. But even if he doesn't agree to go to church, I'm sure it will help him to see that becoming a Christian has made you a different boy. It used to be like pulling teeth to get you to do anything around here.
Aaron was just setting the sprinkler in the last corner of the back lawn when he heard their other car pull into the driveway. His dad was home. Mother had been saving supper, and knowing he would arrive late from the trip he had taken out of town that week, she just thought that he would want a nice warm meal when he got home. Quickly, Aaron dashed in the basement door, washed his hands, and headed for the table. He was sure Dad would notice the lawn and the car on his way in the door and say something about it.
Hi, Dad.
Hello, honey. Supper's all ready. We've been keeping it warm so we could all eat together when you got home. Besides, Aaron's been pretty busy today.
Man, is it good to be home. That was a scorcher driving today. I'm sure glad we got air conditioning in that new car when we bought it last year.
It's been hot here, too. Awfully hot for all the jobs your son has been doing around the house.
Yeah, I bet it was nice over at the pool this afternoon, though. I could have used a dip myself.
I didn't go swimming, Dad.
Didn't go swimming? I figured you and the other fellows would have lived over at the pool on a day like this. Well, maybe you'll have to go tomorrow.
By the way, honey, we got that new contract and start work on the job next week. It's a great opportunity.
That's wonderful, dear.
Aaron and his mother tried all through supper to get his father to notice what had been done, but nothing worked. Aaron didn't want to just come right out and tell him, because that would seem like he'd done it to be noticed, instead of doing it because he loved his dad and wanted him to go to church and wanted him to get saved. After supper, Mrs. Taylor even took him out into the garden to see the tomatoes and the corn, but he didn't even notice that the rows had been freshly hoed. All he could talk about was the new contract and all the things that had happened to him on his trip. Aaron was so disappointed he was almost ready to cry when it came time for bed, but he was too big for that. After he had said good night to his parents in the living room, his mother came in to pray with him, like she'd been doing every night since they were saved.
I know you feel bad that your father hasn't noticed all the good things you've done today, son, but he does have a lot to think about. Maybe tomorrow he'll notice.
But then it will be too late. He doesn't get up until after we leave for Sunday school, and I won't be able to ask him then.
I know, Aaron, and I'm disappointed, too. I had hoped your plan would work. But I do know this, Aaron. You have another Father who did notice what you did today. Your Father in heaven has eyes that behold everything, both the evil and the good. Remember when the preacher preached that last Sunday?
I guess so. But I just thought about him seeing what I do when I sin. I didn't think about him seeing the good things I do, too.
Well, I'm sure he does. And we'll just have to keep praying for your father.
The next morning, Aaron was up early and had water boiling for the tea he knew his mother liked first thing in the morning. He kept hoping and praying all through breakfast that something would happen to wake Dad up so he could ask him to go to church. But time came for them to leave, and Dad was still sound asleep. Sunday school almost took Aaron's mind off his dad. It was so much fun to be learning about Christ. But when church started, all of the disappointment returned as he went to sit with his mother. Oh, how he wished Dad were sitting there in the pew with them. He bowed his head to wipe away the uninvited tear that had crept into the corner of his eye, and decided that since he had his head bowed, he would pray once more for his dad. While he was praying, he felt his mother slide over to make room for someone else to move into the pew. The song leader had just announced for everyone to scoot to the center, so he slid over too without even opening his eyes. Then the song leader announced the first song, and Aaron reached out for the hymn book. But someone else's hand was already there, and it wasn't Mother's. His eyes followed the arm that was holding the book up until they met the eyes of his dad. At first, Aaron almost forgot he was in church and started to shout, but quickly he stifled that and just beamed from ear to ear as those uninvited tears filled up his eyes again. As the congregation started to sing, Mr. Taylor leaned over and whispered in Aaron's ear, "I couldn't find anything to do around the house today, so I decided I'd come on over to church. Besides, I had to see what could possibly have made such a change in a certain young man I know." Aaron blinked back the tears and tried to see the words on the page of the songbook as all three of them joined the congregation in singing, "To God be the glory, great things he has done."
A lot of people have excuses for not going to church and not getting saved. Jesus loves them, and he died for their sins, But the devil has them fooled, and they have all kinds of excuses. We have a story about that now, called Missing Guests.
Hebrews 5. We're going to read verses 12 through 14. Hebrews 5, verses 12 through 14. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the first principles of the oracles of God. And you have come to need milk and not solid food. For everyone who partakes only of milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, for he is a baby. But solid food belongs to those who are of full age, that is, those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. Now, what are these verses talking about? Milk and meat and the word of God? Well, I think our story will help us understand. It's called Missing Guests. Do we have to go to church this morning? Brent asked his mother with a bit of a whine. Can't we stay home and get ready for the Andersons? Some former neighbors from another town were coming for a visit. Mother surveyed the house. Well, everything is ready, she said. The roast is in the oven, the table is set, the house has been cleaned from top to bottom. Well, maybe they'll get here early. Shouldn't we be here to greet them? Dad said firmly, we are going to church this morning, son. I'm a little concerned about your attitude lately, Brent. You didn't want to go to church last week either. Brent just shrugged. Well, after church, Brent and his family hurried right home, looking forward to their visitors. But no one was there. So after a while, Dad turned on the telephone answering machine to see if there were any messages. Brent heard the familiar click, and then he heard Mr. Anderson's voice. I'm sorry we won't be able to make it today, said Mr. Anderson. It's been a busy week, and we just don't feel up to making the 50-mile trip. What kind of lame excuse is that? Protested Brent. Poor Mom, she spent all that time cleaning and cooking, and we all helped too, and now they're not even coming. Dad looked at Brent thoughtfully. Well, this reminds me of someone else who prepared a special meal, but the guests didn't want to come, he said. Really? Asked Brent. Who didn't want to come? You. Me? Dad went on to explain. Pastor Muller is a man who loves the Lord, cares about teaching the Bible. Each week he spends many hours in study, preparing a message that's like, well, a spiritual meal for us. The choir and those giving the special music help prepare that spiritual meal by spending a lot of time in practice. Think how they feel when people give silly reasons for staying home from church. Well, how about you? Do you often stay home from church or youth activities to watch a special TV show or because you're just too tired? Many people spend time preparing for each meeting. Be there so that you can eat the spiritual food that comes from God's Word and from fellowship with Christians. As a result, you will grow in the Lord and not just handle milk, but meat of the Word as well. Psalm 34:8, Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who trusts in Him.
After all He's done for me, after all He's done for me, how can I do less than give Him my best and live for Him completely, after all He's done for me? All for Jesus, all for Jesus, all my being's ransomed powers, all my thoughts and words and doings, all my days and all my hours, all for Jesus, all for Jesus, all my days and all my hours, all for Jesus, all for Jesus, all my days and all my hours. Let my hands perform His bidding, let my feet run in His ways, let my eyes see Jesus only, Let my lips speak forth his praise. All for Jesus, all for Jesus. Let my lips speak forth his praise. All for Jesus, all for Jesus. Let my lips speak forth his praise. After all he's done for me, after all he's done for me, how can I do less than give him my best and live for him completely? After all he's done for me.
Have you asked Jesus to come into your heart and save you? If not, what is your excuse? When you meet Jesus as your judge, he will not listen to any excuses, and it will be too late to be saved. Give your life to him today. Ask his forgiveness and salvation. He's waiting for you to come to him. Write to us and we'll be glad to help you know how to become a true child of God.
This is the Captain's address. Captain's Kiss, Harbour Light of the Windwards, Carriacou, Grenada. Captain's Kiss, Harbour Light of the Windwards, Carriacou, Grenada.
We'll be looking for your letter. Bye for now.
Captain!